So Kim, what's on your radar?
Well, a decorated U.S. Marine Corps officer has been relieved of command, forced to undergo a mental health check, and is being threatened with a court-martial after posting a video demanding accountability from senior leadership over the withdrawal in Afghanistan. Last Thursday, after 13 service members and over 100 civilians were killed following an attack at the Kabul airport, Lieutenant Colonel Stuart Scheller posted a video on Facebook sharing his grief and frustration. In the video, he called on military leadership to take accountability for the strategic decision to abandon Bagram Air Base and leave Afghanistan without evacuating civilians first. Here's a clip from that video.
So in the current fallout of Afghanistan, a lot of Marines were posting on social media, and in response to that, the Commandant published a letter, which is the Service Chief of the Marine Corps. And I'm going to read from it. It was dated 18 August, so only a week ago. The Commandant, sir, you wrote, "Some of you may be struggling with a simple question. Was it all worth it? We want you to know that your service was meaningful, powerful, and important. You fought for the Marine to your left and the Marine to your right. You never let them down." And then you go on to say that, if we're struggling, we should seek counseling, which, I get it. People have killed people. I've killed people, and I seek counseling, and that's fine. There's a time and place for that. But the reason people are so upset on social media right now is not because the Marine on the battlefield let someone down. That service member has always rose to the occasion and done extraordinary things. People are upset because their senior leaders let them down, and none of them are raising their hands and accepting accountability or saying, we messed this up. If an 05 battalion commander has the simplest live fire incident EO complaint, boom, fired. But we have a Secretary of Defense that testified to Congress in May that the Afghan National Security Force could withstand the Taliban advance. We have chairmen of Joint Chief, who the Commandant is a member of that, who's supposed to advise on military policy. We have a Marine combatant commander. All of these people are supposed to advise. And I'm not saying we've got to be in Afghanistan forever, but I am saying, did any of you throw your rank on the table and say, hey, it's a bad idea to evacuate Bagram Airfield, the strategic air base, before we evacuate everyone? Did anyone do that? And when you didn't think to do that, did anyone raise their hand and say, we completely messed this up? I've got battalion commander friends right now that are posting similar things, and they're saying, wondering if all the lives were lost and if it was in vain, all those people that we've lost over the last 20 years. And he goes on to say that we're all part of a chain. While every link may not be tested, the strength of the chain is only as strong as each link, and you got to be, good link, something like that. And what I'll say is, from my position, potentially all those people did die in vain if we don't have senior leaders that own up and raise their hand and say, we did not do this well in the end. Without that, we just keep repeating the same mistakes. This amalgamation of the economic / corporate / political / higher military ranks are not holding up their end of the bargain. I want to say this very strongly. I have been fighting for 17 years. I am willing to throw it all away to say to my senior leaders, I demand accountability.
Now, after the video went viral overnight, Scheller posted on Facebook the next day that he had been relieved of command, stating, quote, I've been relieved for cause based on a lack of trust and confidence as of 14:30 today. My chain of command is doing exactly what I would do if I were in their shoes. A few hours later, Stuart Scheller posted again on his Facebook, this time saying he was receiving multiple messages from fellow Marines begging for him to remove the video out of fear leaving it up would come at huge personal cost. Scheller said he had time to think about it and went on to say, quote, we can't all be wrong. If you all agree, then step up. They only have the power because we allow it. What if we all demanded accountability, unquote. And then citing Thomas Jefferson, stating, every generation needs a revolution. Now, 2 days later, another video appeared, this time titled Your Move, where the lieutenant colonel retired his commission from the Marines after 17 years of service and forfeited his retirement, which he was only 3 years away from.
After 17 years, I'm currently not pending legal action, and I could stay in the Marine Corps for another 3 years, but I don't think that's the path I'm on. I'm resigning my commission as a United States Marine, effective now. I'm sure there's some MAR admin on how I'm supposed to do that, and I'll work through that. But I am forfeiting my retirement, all entitlements. I don't want a single dollar. I don't want any money from the VA. I don't want any VA benefits. I'm sure I'm entitled to 100%. I, breathed on the smell and smoke of burning shit for years. I don't want any of it. All I asked for was accountability of my senior leaders when there are clear, obvious mistakes that were made. I'm not saying we can take back what has been done. All I asked for was accountability, for people to comment on what I said and to say, yes, mistakes were made. And had they done that, I would have gone back into rank and file, submitted, and accomplished what I wanted. The morning after I posted my video and I came into work, my boss came in and he asked me, what were you trying to accomplish? And that was a very tough question for me. And my response was, I want senior leaders to accept accountability. I think them accepting accountability would do more for service members and PTSD and struggling with purpose than any other transparent piece of paper or message. And I haven't received that. For the over $2 million that I would potentially receive in retirement for the rest of my life, for the however much extra the disability would be, I think that money should go back to all the senior general officers because I think they need it more than I do. Because when I am done with what I'm about to do, you all are going to need the jobs and the security.
So what is he about to do? Well, he alludes to wanting to burn the system down. Now, this set off alarm bells. The next day when Stuart went into work, he was ordered by his commanding officer to undergo a mental health screening. In his Facebook post, Scheller stated, quote, excusing the actions of service members because of PTSD does more damage to service members than any trauma in combat. Accountability from senior leaders would alleviate feelings of guilt or shame in service members more than individual counseling. It would save thousands of lives, unquote. Now, yesterday, Stuart Scheller made a post claiming General David Berger is looking into court-martialing him. Quote, General Berger, sir, I understand you want to court-martial me. Your entire staff has already told me. All the captains you spoke to already text me. You recently banned all unit social media pages so that you could centralize the message because I'm assuming you think Marine leaders aren't capable of passing a message in line with your intent. Your problem right now is that I'm moving faster than you. I'm outmaneuvering you. Now, I admit he sounds on edge, but why wouldn't he? During his entire 17-year military career, we've been a nation at war in Afghanistan. Suddenly, in a matter of days, the war is over, and the Taliban are stronger than they were when he started. He feels lied to, he's lost friends, and he's questioning what it was really all for. Now, Scheller is a heavily decorated Marine officer, having been awarded over 30 awards and decorations, including 3 meritorious service medals and a Bronze Star. The Marine Corps Times spoke to 2 different Marines who served with Scheller, the first saying, quote, he's always been an infantry officer, meaning there's a 100% guarantee that he has seen Marines get blown to pieces for absolutely no reason, while the top brass advance their careers with impunity despite their many failures. The second Marine said, quote, Stuart Scheller was my commanding officer during my last deployment. He was the kind of officer who always puts his Marines first. Naturally, we knew there was no way he was ever going to make general with that kind of selfless leadership style. And that's exactly what Lieutenant Colonel Scheller is doing now. He's putting his Marines first. He knows, as he stated over and over, that the men and women he served with are battling tough emotions. These service members are realizing they were asked to sacrifice their lives, not for freedom or democracy, but for companies and individuals to make money. That people were either hiding the truth or were unwilling to face the fact that the Afghan forces and the puppet government had no will to fight and were riddled in corruption. That the withdrawal of our military personnel first while leaving civilians behind was a mistake that was made because the administration, top brass, and state and intel didn't want to admit the lie that they had been propping up for the past 2 decades. And now Scheller is fighting a new battle. He's waging war on the narratives, the status quo. He's fighting on behalf of his Marines who have lost morale and are suffering mentally because of it. He wants someone to step up and say, it wasn't your fault, it was mine. And his attitude is one we should all be adopting. We should all be demanding accountability for these endless, wasteful, useless, failed wars. Now he's putting everything he has on the line, his job, his retirement, and I'm sure this is causing some pain in his family and strain amongst his friends. He's risking it all. Yet here we are. The average American so used to war that it rarely ever makes the news. The failures get glossed over, the lives lost are forgotten, and we watch in horror for a moment or two when there's nothing bigger going on, and then we just go straight back to eating our bagels and drinking our coffee. And because of this apathy that has become the norm in America, nothing fundamentally changes. We are so far removed from the wars we wage that the reports of the carnage from suicide bombs or entire families filled with children being droned leaves us shaking our head, then moving on with our lives like this is normal, because sadly it is. And the brass keep getting promoted. Politicians keep funneling the money. And when the war ends, we move on to the next one, which I'm sure we will. Next will most likely be proxy wars with China. So my question is, will Stuart's quest for accountability be all in vain? Will attitudes shift? Will America say no to the profitable military machine President Eisenhower warned us of? Will we finally step up when politicians try to frighten us into the next battle? Or will we continue this endless cycle of endless wars? So, Alyssa, I want to ask you, do you think that Lieutenant Colonel Scheller's quest, him kind of throwing it all away, is going to be all in vain, or will this actually send some sort of ripple up the ranks?
Well, I'm grateful for his powerful voice, and Kim, for your reporting on this, but I'm skeptical that there's going to be any accountability. And I just want to know, I was flipping through the cable news this morning to kind of get a sense how, after the official withdrawal, Afghanistan's being covered in the last 20 years of a debacle and disastrous war. And it's more or less disappeared from the headlines. CNN did a brief segment basically saying, Biden was right and it was a good speech. But mark my words, we are going to just see it disappear from headlines. There are not going to be conversations about the last 20 years. I've advocated for specifically talking about the withdrawal itself, because at least that permeates the hearts and minds of Americans, and I think can put it at the forefront of discussion. It could call for congressional hearings, and then we could get into the broader discussion. I worry we're not even going to talk about that. I think that the media is going to move on as quickly as they did on, the Pentagon Papers back in 2019, and we're going to leave, tens of thousands of Afghan war veterans who feel confused, lost, betrayed, lied to, asking these same questions with no answers and no accountability.
Yeah. Ryan, what are your thoughts on this?
I mean, to me, first of all, there's a fundamental moral inconsistency in what he's saying that I don't think we should gloss over. And that is this. He says in his video that he does think that the war ought to be ending, but he doesn't like the way that the leadership carried it out, Bagram, this and that. Where was he over the last 17 years if he thought that this war should be ending? So all of a sudden now, he feels like he's compelled to break ranks and go forward. Secondly, and we could talk about that, but secondly, the idea of a lieutenant colonel in uniform talking publicly, attacking his civilian defense secretary, or trying to organize a revolution, saying that he's outmaneuvering the top ranks, telling them that he has things planned for them that's going to be a problem for them. I don't think people necessarily understand the gift that we've had in this country to have civilian control over the military.
Is the defense secretary a civilian? I mean,
well, he is. Yes, you can give him a waiver, so we call him a civilian.
Yes, he's a civilian.
He's not a civilian.
He is a civilian. The president's a civilian.
Technically.
Yes, he should not have been given a waiver, and I think the Democrats, should not have allowed him to get a waiver, because he hadn't. In order to serve, what is it? You have to be 7 years out of the military.
We gave Mattis a waiver. We gave
Mattis got a waiver. He got a waiver. He is a civilian. He's not just, and he's criticizing his civilian leadership. He's also publicly criticizing all of those above him. He's trying to organize people to say, join with me and challenge your senior leadership. He's doing this in uniform. We could look back on this several years from now and say this was the break. Like, this was the moment that civilian control of government, a democratic civilian control of government, was broken. And Scheller, okay, yes, he's clearly taking a risk. And I think the hammer should come down on him so that these types of mutinies from the military do not become part of our politics. But he also clearly has political ambitions. I wouldn't be surprised if Republicans are drafting him by the end of today to run for Congress or Senate.
But I think more people in the military should be speaking up like him.
Then you're going to get a military coup. You'll have that within 6 months.
We need military to be saying
just
no
to be
to
clear,
this military
that's
industrial complex.
That is outrageous.
No,
we absolutely do not need the military saying anything publicly in our politics.
For corporations to make a bunch of money. They've got to step forward and say this.
You will regret that unless you want a military dictatorship.
I agree keeping politics out of the military is crucial, but I would say this lieutenant colonel spoke out and the next day was fired. If he had any time in the last 17 years, the same thing would have happened. He and his rank and file are absolutely powerless to speak out against generals and to challenge the policymaking. That was the one point I wanted to make.
Yeah,
he did bring up that another one of his comrades had actually spoken up a few years ago and had the same fate as him, and it didn't make the news at that time. I mean, this is now an opportunity to make the news in doing this. And I do think that military members need to step up and say, I'm not going to die for your wasteful, crappy wars anymore.
It's the politicians and the elected civilian officials that we need to take on. This was Joe Biden's decision. This was the National Security Advisor's decision. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff doesn't make policy. He's an advisor. There's plenty to look into of why he didn't warn sooner, why he was wrong in congressional testimony, but ultimately the buck stops with the civilian leadership, and I think that is where Stuart needs to be directing his anger.
Yeah, that's right. And we just cannot have figures from the military urging revolution and organizing rallies and trying to overthrow their leadership. That only leads one direction, and it's a very dark place.
We need congressional accountability.
If you like the leadership, I suppose.
Right, yeah. So yes, obviously, every country, when they do have a military coup, has massive parts of the population that support it. I see where you would be if this happened. That doesn't mean it's a decent thing. I don't think he's calling
for a coup. I mean, he's just saying we want accountability, and I don't think that there's anything wrong in anybody stepping forward and saying, I'm not willing to do this anymore, and people are losing their morale, and these guys come back with PTSD, and they're depressed, and they don't have the World War II vets. Those guys got to come back and say, I fought against the Nazis. The Vietnam vets didn't get to say that. These guys aren't going to be able to say that. They go on and they're depressed, and somebody's got to step up for them. So, I don't think he's calling for a coup. I don't know if we need to go that far.
He did say revolution, but we'll have to.
You're right, maybe.
We'll have to leave it. We'll have to leave it there. Alyssa, looking forward to what's on your radar next.